myself too. Okay. Fabulous. Okay, let's get started. It's 12 o'clock. Thank you guys so much for coming today. I've met some of you before, but just by way of introductions, my name is Tess Diver. I worked on this orientation for College for America students for the last few months as the subject matter expert. I used to work at College for America for about 4 years, so I was able to leverage a lot of interviews with your advising team and a lot of survey data and interviews with students and a lot of stakeholders at the university and played the role of pulling it all together. So very excited to show you this today. We're going to talk about the objectives for what are the outcomes of the orientation, and also we're going to do a walkthrough of what it looks like for students and be able to answer any questions you have about the launch and timelines. So before we get started in that, I wanted to kind of highlight for you where we've been. And this is the space that you all have been living in for a long time. And I was part of the original team that developed this orientation on the homepage for students in the legacy or original CFA programs. So just to sort of give you the contrast, students in College for America today will have an opportunity to read about their program and different success strategies. But you can see when you click in resources, it's very text-based, not a lot of images or activities, certainly nothing personalized in here. So that's where we are today. And students also don't have access to it prior to their term start, which has always been problematic for students who really want to get in there early and learn about the program and have a lot of their questions answered and reduce that anxiety before their term start. So we have a lot of changes on in store for you all as advisors and certainly for students, and I want to tell you all about that. So the first two things I want to talk about are the big changes to orientation for College for America students, and that is really around personalization and access. So the personalized piece comes into play where students are going to actually participate in a personalized orientation activity. I'll show you what that looks like in just a minute. When they do this personalized orientation activity, the system is set up to release content based on their inputs. So students will tell us a little bit about what they want to learn in orientation and who they are. And inside this recommended for you unit, that unit will populate based on their inputs, which is really cool. So they get the feeling that this is for them and that this is, custom relevant content that they want to know about in their orientation. The other piece is the access. As I said, historically, there's been very limited access. As of this launch, students will have access for at least 4 weeks, so 4 weeks prior to launch. So, I'm sorry, 4 weeks prior to their term start, they will be able to get into orientation. They have access once they're a registered student, so admissions actually registers them for this course, and that can happen up to 4 weeks early. So they can have access 4 weeks prior to their term start, which is fabulous. They also have it open for the entire first term, which is new for COCE for every student. Traditionally, COCE students have access up until the first week of their term, so day 3 of the term it gets shut off. We're setting a new benchmark, a new bar with this orientation and keeping it open for the whole term, which changes the really the kind of heart and soul of what this is, and it becomes less of a once and done fire hose of information for students and more of a just-in-time information that students can access anytime they need it in that first term. So think about that as you think about your relationship with students and how you might leverage this as an advisor to refer them back here, use this as different activities in here to connect with your students and build their readiness, and also touch base with them on this throughout their term. So I won't read these to you. These are the development objectives, but just so you know, this is what guided. I wrote these to really guide the creation of the orientation and the content. Um, you know and I know that building confidence and a growth mindset is critical to academic success, especially in the first term when you're very likely to encounter a lot of obstacles. Developing a sense of belonging. Literature would tell us, and our experience with certainly with competency-based education, that's important for online learners to really feel like they're a part of the university, to connect with each other. That's going to help academic performance as well. And when we think about orientation, typically we think about the last bullet here, which is preparing for courses. So that's certainly baked into here as well. You know, we think about how to increase their readiness for their degree program. We also want to provide just-in-time information. That's that access piece. So give them what they need when they need it. Provide content that is CBE relevant. So really, I like to use the term relentlessly relevant in that everything that we put in front of them needs to speak to them and be relevant for where they are, and so they see themselves as a student here. And then finally, the analytical insights. Brightspace gives us an opportunity to really, and I'll share with you what you're going to have for the launch in terms of insights into student behavior inside the orientation. So you can get a better sense of, is my student participating in orientation or not? Which you really don't have today in the Salesforce version. So that's a big step forward too. Outcomes, I won't read these to you, but I like to think a lot about the last bullet here, identifying opportunities to increase readiness for online learning. Students come in the door with a lot of different perspectives on what that means to learn in an online environment. And built into the orientation is some reflections on meeting the student where they're at, understanding where they're coming from, and what they personally can do to increase their readiness to start their term. I'll show you what that looks like. This is the final slide, and then we'll get into the course. I just wanted you to know that we didn't build this course in a vacuum, that there were more than 25 stakeholders, and that I worked with to develop the content and refine the content, and then 7 student testers that went through it with me and offered a lot of great feedback. And 2 sleepless nights for me, but that's okay because it's been such a fun project to work on. And you'll see, if you're familiar with the current CFA orientation, there's a lot of new content in this version. A lot of it is based on that personalized piece. So while it might feel like a lot, if a student doesn't need it, then they don't select it, and they can go through rather quickly. So again, it's that responsive design, give the students what they need. So all right, enough of that. Let's get in here and see what this course looks like. Let me pause and ask if there's any questions on anything that I just said, or kind of where we've been. Maybe now's the time before we dive in to talk about the timeline, because I know that's probably on your mind right now. Students, and I will make sure that you have the toolkit and access to the course. So you'll get a toolkit with like the sort of the value statements and the timeline around rollout. So you'll have all that information. So don't feel like you have to write all that down right now. But around the timeline, 150 students, CFA students, are going to be enrolling in this course as of August 6th. That is 4 weeks prior to the September term. They will be the only ones enrolled in this course to start, so it's a nice small group to go through it, and we'll learn a lot from their feedback. The Atlas students, which you may or may not be involved with, they are going to be enrolled in here as well. So they're a bit of a different user type, but they're going to be enrolled in here as well. So that's 4 weeks prior to the September term start. Okay. So when a student logs in to Brightspace, they land on their home page. And keep in mind that there is a Brightspace optimization group that is constantly thinking about what is on this page and what needs to be on this page. So by the time you guys get in here, let's say in a few weeks, this page could look different. I've heard that they're trying to put the courses all on this home page, so there could be even better better clickability and better usability from this home page by that time. But in today's version, students get to the home page, they go to their waffle up here, and they would just have the one, I have just a lot of demo accounts in here. They would just have the orientation to your College for America program at SNHU. So they would click on that to go to the course. Now this course is not a credit-bearing course. It doesn't have a competency tied to it. It is completely optional. When admissions talks to students, they use the terms highly recommended, so that students are highly encouraged to get in here. And that's something that you all could also work with students to help them understand the value of orientation, and you'll have a better understanding of that value once we go through it. Let me just check and see if there's any questions. I don't see any so far, but if you all want to ever interrupt me or write a message in here, I'll check pretty frequently just to make sure you have your questions answered. All right, so inside the home page here of the course, you see 4 buckets at the top, or we call them units, and then 2 at the bottom. Now, you guys haven't been trained on what a competency looks like yet. However, you will very soon, and this is just for you to know that the orientation mirrors what a competency will look like inside Brightspace. So whenever possible, we want it to be consistent with what they're going to experience. Let me just make sure. Oh, good. You love this. Great. Awesome. Thanks, Brianna. Fabulous. So our job is to make it so students, when they get into their competency on day 1, they're not shocked by what it looks like. They feel ready to get in there and start their projects. So whenever possible, we've used the same icons, the same words, so that they get the habit and skill building that goes along with using this and navigating this. So inside Start here, which is where we're going to start, every student will go through this Personalize Your Orientation. So this is where we click into this checklist, and students can tell us about themselves. There's some examples in here around, I've been out of school for a long time. I'm the first person in my family to go to college. I need support with the English language. You can see how in the future this lays a foundation for us building out specific orientation content for many different types of students. So you could see a future where there might be military students in here, international students, refugee students. So this model is going to give us that personalized piece for a lot of different types of students. The next section here is, what topics would you like to learn more about? They can select that they'd like to learn more about any of these topics. And once they select that they want to learn more about that, you'll see that it's been saved. That is what populates content inside the Recommended for You unit, and I will show you what that unit looks like. We'll go through that content too. If a student doesn't select it the first time they go through, they can always go back later and select it. With the caveat of, once it's selected and the content is released, it's always released, so unchecking it won't collapse the information or remove the information. Once it's selected, but if they don't need this now and they come back later in the term and they really want this encouragement and motivational resources, they can get it by just selecting that checkbox later. So once they've personalized the orientation, gone through that activity, they meet Paul, who does a little introductory video, Welcome to SNHU. Then they read about the online learning experience. So a lot of students come in to their program not quite understanding what it's like to be as an online student, what that looks like, what to expect from the first term. You will learn more about this when you're trained on the competencies inside Brightspace, but there is a competency planning activity that students must complete within the first 14 days of the term for at least one competency. That is what keeps them enrolled in the term. If you're familiar with the term non-PAR, that is the non-PAR activity. If they do not participate in that, they will get unenrolled in their term. So that's right up front there. And then there's frequently asked questions. So this is coming straight from student feedback and from advising feedback on what students want. Kind of quick hitter information, again, to remove ambiguity, to get them what they need when they start and build that confidence. So you can see it's, how do I register? How do I access my competencies? How long is my term? What's the average pace? Financial aid and advising contact information. So I'll make sure you guys can get in here and play around with this so you don't have to feel like you have to read it all right now. The next one is learn about competency-based education. So you know better than I do that there's a lot of different ranges of what students think this is and what it isn't. So we want to use plain language around what this is and then introduce some key terms and concepts that they will hear from you and from their goal leads and their reviewers, etc., that are kind of critical to their program. The next section is meeting your community of support. So we know that support, especially in this model, is so critical to student success. We introduce a lot of different roles in here and help the student understand the relationship that they will have with these different roles. And they have this nice visual to see themselves at the center of this support network. There is a brand new College for America Learning community that will be live for these students. So they're not mixing with the CFA 1.0, if you will, or the original program learning community. They have their own since their programs are updated. And then there's this SNHU diversity statement. I worked with Jada Hebra, our diversity officer, on this to put some diversity resources in here that are very aligned with our values. And then connecting with your SNHU family, social media. This is really designed to help increase that sense of belonging. They can participate in things like the president's blog, for example, and learn, sign up for campus updates. So really bringing them into the fold of our social media accounts, we think is going to help connect them to a wider scope of what's going on in the campus and help ease that sense of belonging, increase that. Then the final section of start here, and then I'll stop and I'll pause for some questions, or if there are any, or comments, is the complete the myth busting quiz. So this is, again, a lot of students come in with misconceptions or different understanding of what online competency-based education is. So this is meant to bust those myths. An example of this would be online learning is impersonal when compared to traditional classroom learning. So we would introduce that as one of these quiz questions, and then we would give them, when they respond, yes or no, true or false, we would serve up some information like, actually online learning is very personal. You have all of these support people who are ready to connect with you. Here's how you connect with your peers. Here's the people you'll be interacting with. So again, it's helping to bust those myths and help students feel like they know what they're getting into and understand what the program is and what it is not. And that is the last section of Start Here. We're going to talk about the project, but let me just open this up and see if there's any. I don't see any questions, but let me know if I'm going too fast or too slow. I'm going to assume the pace is okay unless you guys tell me it's not. So doing great. Okay, fabulous. Thanks, Tiff. I'll just pause for 10 more seconds if anyone has any questions on the Start Here module. Okay. Diversity language. Awesome. Yes, very important. Very important. Thanks, everybody. Okay, we'll keep going. So inside a competency, they would obviously have, as they do now, a project to work on. In orientation, they're not going to be working on a project. That would be a great future state. But they are introduced to what a project is and how to work through it. So the project completion cycle is something that we've used since the inception of CFA Forever. We've talked about this project completion cycle, and this is where you all work with students to really understand, how are they engaging with their learning process and how are they working through their project? Where are they getting stuck? So this is a great point for you guys to have to reflect and bring students back to if they're getting stuck in their projects. Here's a sample project rubric so students know what that's going to look like. And then the final section of the project is the submission checklist. This is consistent for every single competency. Something like I included my name on my project deliverables. Very important, and as students check these off, they feel ready to submit their project. So we wanted to give them an example of this submission checklist in orientation as well. So then, after the project piece, we are in learning, just to orient you back, show you where we are. We went through Start Here, we went through project, and now we're in learning resources. Inside learning resources, there's technology, academic advising, and financial services. There's some great new content in here, or I should say new to orientation content. A lot of this lives already on MySNHU, but I think it's a little harder to find, so we wanted to pull it into orientation. So accessing technology, that includes MySNHU, and we included some top destinations so students can understand, and this is driven by data, student usage. What are they doing on MySNHU as a CFA student? How to log in, and some information on the service portal. The next section is Brightspace. This will be a video. We're going to add a video this week on a specific competency walkthrough so they can watch the video and understand what a competency is and how they're going to be submitting projects, getting feedback from reviewers, and all that stuff is in there. So they'll have their own video for competency-based learning inside Brightspace. Your SNHU email, don't ignore it. We all know that that's easy to do. So helping them understand that it's the official communication channel, and then adding some resources that students find, we've heard that they really like is, how to add it to your phone, and then how to forward your email to another account. The next part of technology is support. Contacting the support desk we know is very important. We've also included some of the most frequently used knowledge articles. So the service portal's here, but also how to submit a ticket and how to find the status of your ticket, which are the two biggest asks or questions that the team gets, the technology team gets. Get free resources or free software as a student. You know that students can get Office 365 for free, so we wanted to put that in here as well in case that's helpful. A lot of students don't have software and they're perhaps doing their work at the library and so forth. So helping them see that this is available might help drive their engagement and persistence, that they can have this for themselves. Find technology support and training. For those of you who are familiar with Atomic Learning, they've rebranded as Who Knew It. It's still the same amazing database of trainings that every staff and student has access to, but we pulled out some computer literacy basics training for those students that need that. Because we do know that students come in with a range of experience in technology, so giving them this as an option is in there too. Then there's a knowledge check, which is just a quick check on what it's a 4 or 5 question quiz on just checking their knowledge on the technology items. Then there's academic advising. So I worked with Dave Carter and some of your team leads and obviously students to work on this content. A lot of this is unchanged from what's in the current orientation, but just what are you going to be working on with your advisor, how to get started with your advisor, how to schedule an appointment with your advisor. I'd love to think about a future state where the student logs in and they actually see their advisor here with their advisor's message, but that's a future state. So for now, it's how to schedule an appointment. And I think there might be a question. Okay, no questions. We'll keep going. Flexibility and pace. This is under learning resources as well. So that's a big question students have around what is pace for this program, how flexible is it? So we offer some language here to help them orient to that. And then this activity is actually in the current CFA orientation. We liked it and students like it. It's not an activity in here. It's something for them to think about and perhaps reflect with you as their advisor, but think about when they have the most energy, what their commitments are, and ultimately what their schedule is, getting to the point where they can write CFA into their calendars and think about how to set up their time so that they reach their goals. Knowledge check on advising, pretty straightforward. It's got a couple questions on the key takeaways there. And then the financial services is the last part of the learning resources unit. So we've got financial services. There's not a ton of information in here, mostly because they're still understanding what CFA students need and what services are going to be offered for CFA students, but they do have the when and why to contact them and how to contact them in here. And then a knowledge check on that. And let me orient you again. We've gone through Start here, project and learning resources, and now we're in academic support. And inside academic support, every competency, so when we think about the competencies inside Brightspace, will have an academic support module, and we've mirrored that here. So everything you see in here will be inside an academic support module inside every single competency. It makes it really easy for students to click here to upload a paper or schedule a workshop. So what we've done is remove the requirement to go to the Writing Center website and then find these things. It's just a quicker way to get to what they need inside this academic support module or unit. We've also, we talk about the project discussion. Inside every competency, which again you will be trained on very soon, inside every competency there's a project discussion. We've mirrored what that looks like. So inside orientation, we're driving students to the discussions area, to this public orientation channel. Since in every competency there will be a public project channel where students can participate in a discussion with their peers, there will also be a private project channel where they communicate directly with their reviewers. So we've mirrored what this public channel will look like, so students can get into this orientation discussion and practice that skill of posting inside Brightspace and getting more comfortable doing that. Totally optional. I will be in here looking at what students are posting, and if there's questions, I'll be able to answer them. And we'll learn from that on what students are using this for. So that is the academic support section here, and then there's accessibility and the OAC contact information. Also inside academic support is what you need to succeed. A lot of this content came from you guys and from students on how we can help increase readiness for online learners. A lot of this is familiar to you. I'm sure you ask your students a lot of these same questions. So again, it's a point of let's get this in front of them early, and then you guys can support driving students back here and having these conversations with students. So when and where are you going to do your work? Thinking about, do you have a calendar system that you use? These are all like great reflection questions to increase their readiness. Is your computer ready for online learning? There's the hardware requirements. There's the a helpful knowledge article on browsers. So thinking about, they can get computer discounts on hardware if they need a new computer. So they can think about that. Do you have access to basic software? This is the Office 365. How comfortable are you with computer tasks? So again, this is a duplicate from the technology section, but we thought it was worth putting in here twice, since students tend to skip around and start in different places. They might review it here first. And then, is your typing speed slowing you down? We know faster typing helps work go faster. So there's some free resources here for students on practicing and increasing their typing. Has it been a while since you've studied? Again, who knew it? Great resources, trainings on these things that we think will help their study strategies. And then, are you comfortable asking for help? This is, we know, of a planned or expected part of the learning process, and the more we can remove this stigma and help students understand that that's something we expect, the better. Any questions on that? I don't see any coming through, but I see Dana's typing something. I'll just pause. Are the knowledge checks required to move through? No, they're not required. That's a great question, Dana. They're not required. They could just skip over that. Yep. I'll talk about reporting and what you guys are going to be able to see, towards the end. Yep, you're welcome. Okay, let's keep moving. So that's what you need to succeed. Next is student conduct, right? We have to have this in here, the handbook, the catalog, 5 habits of successful students. So this is built on interviews with goal leads and students. So I built this in Adobe Spark. I love Adobe Spark, if anyone wants to geek out on that with me at a separate time. But, this is really the specific habits that students can work on and can orient themselves to in order to set themselves up for success in their program. So these won't be unfamiliar to you. Certainly you guys work with your students on this all the time. Yep, so that's that. That might be a great place to drive your students. Have you checked out those 5 habits of successful students? Let's talk about that. So again, a cool thing for you guys to refer back to with your students. Accessibility and disability, we love it so much it's in here twice. Okay, now we have two units left. So recommended for you and what's next. So let's go back out here just so you can see. So recommended for you and what's next. These are the last 2. We're going to go back where we were. If a student forgets to go into start here and they didn't do the activity personalized orientation, when they get in here, this will be in here. So it won't be blank. That would be confusing. So they can remind, oh, I didn't do that. That's why nothing's showing up. So they do this activity, and then if they selected items, they would populate here. So let's go into what these look like. If a student selects that they are the first in their family to go to school, to go to college, this is the module. That click on that checklist releases this module, this information. So we know that first generation students are very connected with their networks, and we need to help them feel connected to their school network. And building that sense of belonging is so critical for that student. So we've done a lot of language to develop that here, and along with the resources that are ready to connect with you. And a reminder about connecting with, if you need support, you're part of this community. So this language you will see is very specific for that type of student. The next section is for students who want to learn about English language support. So they've identified as needing support there on the checklist, on the activity. They can click here to there's an ESOL. I'll show you what this looks like really quick. There is through the Writing Center, there's English language learners kind of guide here. So there's all their resources are in one place, which is just fabulous. They can also do some activities to improve their English skills, and then some access tools. The next one is for when a student in the activity identifies as I've been out of school for a long time. This is the content that releases. So we've identified some study strategies for them. And then these won't be unfamiliar to you. And then study skills. So some reading comprehension strategies. You'll see these topics here as well. So good stuff there. Get inspired. This is what releases when a student says they want some inspirational messaging or motivation. And we know that every student gets stuck from time to time, so we put in some resources here. I love this unstuck.com. I've used this for years. This is a great resource. And then articles on how to motivate, and as well as some practical advice from other students. In the personalized orientation activity, there's an option to select, I'd like to learn some strategies for completing my degree program. And that is what, if they select that, Build Your Grit is what releases. So you probably have heard of Angela Duckworth. If not, you will soon. She's got a great book called Grit, and I read it and I was like, this needs to be in orientation, because it's got some really practical tips for how students can increase their persistence and think about their work differently and how they work, so that they have a higher likelihood to persist. There's a little quiz in here on how gritty are you? Setbacks don't discourage me. You can see the examples here. So it's a great reflection tool for students to say, how gritty are they? And then there's this strategies for building your grit so that you can reach your goals. In this case, it could be any goal, but we really think about the graduation goal. So there's some strategies in here as well. Followed by her TED Talk and one of those neat videos that's like a sketch with like text on it, a video. It's an overview of her book, so students can really feel connected to this topic. I just love this module. I think it's really practical and so kind of cutting edge. Like, her book is just really out there right now, so pretty cool stuff. Find your balance. So again, we opted to put this in the recommended for you in the not the core content, but the personalized content, because we want to recognize a lot of students are very busy and not all of them need time management. I mean, we tend in higher ed to hit students over the head really hard with time management, but not every student needs that. And we wanted to appreciate that. So if they want it, they can identify in the personalized orientation activity that they want time management strategies, and this is the content that will open for them. So there's a good TED Talk in here and some popular resources there. Students who identify as wanting to learn about graduation and beyond, this is what will open. This is last year's highlight reel, and it's pretty powerful to think about. I love that this is in here, since we can help students imagine what it'll be like to cross the stage and shake Paul's hand, or not, but think about what graduation is like and imagine yourself graduating. And then there's alumni network, alumni association information, and social media, so they can feel like they're part of our network already. They can certainly get involved. Accessing webinars and events. Not every student is that kind of student that wants webinars or online events. These are, I'll click on this for example. These are COCE events calendar. So these are events that are specifically designed for online students. So by clicking this link and getting into these events page, they won't be learning like about campus stuff. You'll see this section, upcoming events for online students, and there's just a ton. So they can get as involved as they want to, or not. So again, it's in that recommended personalized section. So if they're the kind of student that likes to get involved in those things, they can get into here. Make sure there's no questions. Yay!
We're just celebrating. Thank you for including that.
Oh, good. Well, you guys did the content, It's fabulous. It's all your hard work on display. It's fabulous. So then the final unit is what's next, to leave students with some inspirational messaging and to help them feel like they're ready to start their term. There's this final readiness check. A lot of students like checklists. A lot of people like checklists. I think there's even I read a book called Checklist recently, and it's like all about the power of checklists. And I'm one of those people who likes this. So, you could, if you wanted to, this is optional, right? Everything's optional in here, but if you wanted to feel like completely ready, you can use this as a guide. And once you've checked off all these things, our student testers were like, I love it. Like if I have a question on one of these, I'm going to go back and find where that's referenced and feel like completely ready to start my term. So this, thinking about your role as advisors, this might be a great place to start with your students. Did you take the final readiness check? Did you have any questions on those items? Let me show you in orientation where those things are so that you have, you can finish that checklist and feel completely ready to start your program. So think of this as a tool that you can use too. Then you're ready to start the term. In here we talk about you have access throughout the first term to this orientation, and we encourage you to come back. And then the last section here is your opinion matters. So this content in the survey is directly connected. You can see some of the questions here. How confident are you in starting your term? I'm really measuring confidence, sense of belonging, and online learning readiness so that we can hear from students how prepared they feel, and we can continue to iterate on the content. This will be paired with informational interviews with students and a lot of conversations with you guys as advisors and with students so that we can continue to iterate the content and make it, all it could be. So that is it. That is it in a nutshell. As far as you probably have questions about reporting and data, like what are you going to be able to see? So let me tell you, there's some immediate report. There's an immediate report that you're going to have if you're coaching or you're advising a CFA student, and then there's a longer term strategy. So the first thing is for the September launch, for the August, it's really August launch, you're going to be able to see if you are advising a student in this program, you are going to be able to see if your student has engaged in a knowledge check or engaged in a checklist. So you're going to be able to see if they participated in those activities inside Brightspace, inside this orientation course in Brightspace. The longer term, the request is in for this. We want to give you what is my student checking off on those checklists. So are they checking off that they are a first in my family to go to school, or that they want to learn about inspirational messaging? What are they doing on that final readiness checklist that you could look at and say, oh, they didn't check this off. Like, I'm going to talk to them about, that they didn't log into their SNHU email, or that, they don't know how to connect with their peers. So you can have that information if you want to use it with your students. So I think that checklist detail type of report is going to be very powerful. It's just not ready for the launch. But that is my personal mission to give that to you. And with that in mind, just a quick recap on the timeline. So August 6th, this is launching for 150 brand new CFA students, and the Atlas group that's going to be based on campus. I'm still figuring out where this content can live after the first term. I imagine a home for it somewhere. As you may know, my SNHU is being overhauled right now, so it's a great time for us to plan where this content could live, should live, how it connects with the greater My SNHU project. But my goal is to have you guys, when your students are in their second term, be able to point students to where they can still get this information so that it doesn't completely disappear for them. And kind of finally, and then I'll pause for a breath and a drink of water, and I'll wait for some questions to come in. The final piece is you will get a toolkit from me on what this is, the value statements, what we're trying to get, what we think is important about this, and all kind of that logistical stuff. So you have, we think, what you need to help students engage in this course. Okay, I'm going to get a drink of water. Okay, let's see. Yay! Thanks, Dana. Fabulous. What if anyone wants to unmute too, happy to talk to you, or you can post a comment. That's fine too. Let me ask a question. Oh, thank you, Emily. Let me ask a question. Is there anything that you expected to see inside this orientation that is not there? I'll just pick your brains while we have a couple extra minutes. So I'm always looking for, you guys have the most insight on what students need when they start their program. So, and if there's something you don't want to say to me now, you can certainly, my email is t.diver, D-I-V-E-R. I'll put it in the chat, t.diver. So email me any feedback or thoughts or creative ideas or anything that you might have to continue to improve it. Was there a page on citations? Brianna, that's a great question. Let me show you where that is. We know students definitely need that. That is inside academic support. And then there's an academic support section here. If you scroll down, I didn't hover over this, so you didn't miss it. There is the citation guide here. This leads students to the Shapiro Library version. So we are, I think, phasing out the CFA version and going with the, they have both styles in here for grads and undergrads and liberal arts and everything. They have it all covered in that guide. So. Oh, you're welcome.
Hi, Tess. It's Kim.
Hi, Kim.
Hi. I just wanted to say this is great. I'm super excited to see how students use it and what they click into, what they don't click into. But this is super awesome, and I'm pumped about it. So just throwing that out there.
Awesome, thank
That sounds
you.
good. Yeah.
I'm
I
so
second
glad.
that.
I'm very
Thank you
glad to
for all
hear that.
your hard work on it.
Oh, you're so welcome. It's been my pleasure. I've actually enjoyed working across the organization and getting everybody's insights and we're all in this to help students be more successful in their first term and ultimately to persist. So, um, my goal is to impact our melt rate, which is, kind of high right now. And a lot of students come in the door, they don't know what this is, what the program is, and they've been told different things. So you guys are amazing in your role to help them orient and get ready for all of this new experience that they're going to be having. So I'm really excited to hear how increased access improves success. So if giving this to them 4 weeks prior and throughout the term is going to impact first term success. So I hope that we can keep the lines of communication open. So my email's in there. I'm on Workday too if you want to find me, and let me know how it's going. I'll certainly be coming back to you in the coming months for more feedback on what you're hearing from students. So I really appreciate everything you guys do. Awesome.
Tess, this is Dana. Did you mention when we might have access to poke around? I think you said it was coming soon, but just
Yes,
curious.
I did check with Dave Carter on that. He has requested access for those advisors who have students starting in September. There's a
Okay. Yep.
question mark out there in terms of when everyone else will be enrolled in the course.
Okay.
So I have to take that as a question mark right now, but it will be included in the toolkit that I'll send out.
Okay. Sure.
Yeah.
And is there a sense of how long it takes students to work through it, or what some of the test students felt as they looked into this for the first time?
Yeah, and that's a hard question to answer. Since they can do the personalized piece, they could release a lot of content or
Yeah.
not so much. When I was designing it, I had 2 hours in mind, so I know that.
Okay.
But again, as it's open 4 weeks in advance and throughout the full term, a lot of the feedback I got from students was, well, I might not use this now, and I might just breeze through it, but wow, good to know that I can access it later if I get, stuck on something and I really want to come back here. So I think
Yeah.
it changes the interaction students have with this, so they might not do an end-to-end review of this. They could, poke around. I had a lot of students who just didn't start here even. They went right to academic support, or they went to learning resources to start with. So it's a little hard to tell. So my answer is it's a little hard to tell, but the content itself, I believe students can go through end to end in a few hours.
Okay. Okay. I mean, it's incredibly detailed. It's an amazing resource. I'm just trying to picture the breadth of diversity in terms of educational skills that we have with our students, and, picturing supporting folks to get through it, some of them, and what that will look like. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's, I think, the real design challenge is to give them what they need and not more than what they need, which is why we pushed a lot of that content into recommended for you, the personalized piece. So if you're hearing, I can't wait to hear what you're hearing in terms of how are students using this.
Yeah.
And it's nice we have 150 students, so it's a smaller pilot, so to speak. So we'll get some great feedback.
Yeah, I'll be working with some of those, so that'll be interesting. Yeah.
Oh, great. Yeah.
Good.
So it sounds like you guys are feeling pretty good about it. I know I owe you some more information on which will be included in the toolkit around kind of the highlights, the cliff notes of this, the timelines, access for you guys, and all that stuff. So I'm working on that toolkit now, and that should be out within the next week and a half. Sound good? Is there anything else I can do? Otherwise, we'll sign off a little early.
That's awesome. Thanks, Tess, for all of this.
Tess.
Great.
Thanks,
Thank you
Tess.
so much. Take care, everybody. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Tess.